Before I start this video off, I want to talk about two projects I've been working on. The first project, of course, is my very own podcast. Gardner Bryant, Games Revealed, and I came together to create this brand new podcast called Off the Console. It's a gaming podcast where we talk about all things gaming. While it's not strictly Steam Deck oriented, we do talk a bit about the Steam Deck. And of course, sometimes we'll talk about non-gaming technologies. If you want to check out that podcast, there's a link in the description down below. As for my second project, the second project has to do with a revival of the Steam Pals. It's been about a year since the Steam Pals have last convened. Noah from Steam Deck HQ came to me to resurrect the Steam Pals, and that I did. This latest Next Fest features 6 of us. It features yours truly, Fan the Deck, The Fox, Nerd Nest, Retro Game Core, and Steam Deck HQ. This first episode was talking about everyone's favorite Next Fest demo. You can find that video on Steam Deck HQ's channel, so there's a link in the description down below for that as well. So let's get to it, shall we? Last week, I spent the entirety of my free time playing Steam Deck Next Fest demos. I've searched high and low for some truly great and sometimes truly awful demos. And this is my journey. Not every game listed in this video is a slam dunk. All of this footage was captured from a Steam Deck directly using my capture card. So you might be asking yourself, how many demos did I try? Well, the answer is over 50. The Steam Deck Next Fest is a celebration of upcoming games. Literally hundreds of demos from development studios of all different sizes. If you've watched my prior Next Fest videos, you know how these usually play out. I usually talk about 10 or so demos I liked to some degree. But this time it's going to be a little different. This time I'll be covering over 50 different demos. Now, contrary to popular belief, I don't really pick demos that I know I won't enjoy. I usually pick demos that I think I'll enjoy, but sometimes that isn't the case. And that sucks too, because some of these demos are demos I really want to try out. But before that, if you like this video or any other video I've made, please like, subscribe, and share with all of your friends. Spreading the good gospel of high-tech low-life really helps the YouTube algorithm recognize me. Bionaire is a roguelike pachinko game. Your goal is to make as much money as possible in a set number of turns. The main twist is that you get a bunch of objects you can bonk into, which in turn grants you special effects. Sometimes it gives you more money, other times it bounces you upwards. With all the objects that are littered around the field that you place yourself, it kind of gives off a sort of pinball vibe. The balachification of classic gambling games is great. Even with this just being a demo, there's a lot to chew here. Enough for you to make an informed decision on whether or not you like this game or not. I have a synergy where if it lands properly, the jumper will jump it through the tree multiple different times, which in turn makes me a ton of money. Even that seems to have its limits because I couldn't beat the demo with that build, but you know what? I'm willing to go right back into the trenches. And the physics-based nature of this game makes it so that no two games will ever be the same, even on the same seed. The game worked quite well on Steam Deck, but there's no official release date. Not yet, at least. Is it Spirit Strike or Spirit X Strike or Spirit Cross Strike? You never know with these sorts of games. Maybe the X is silent, kind of like how Hunter x Hunter is actually supposed to be pronounced Hunter Hunter. Spirit Strike certainly has the look of a shonen manga, more specifically Fist of the North Star. I can feel it. It wants to be a sort of like spectacle fighter with air juggling and all that. But in practice, it feels more like an off-brand version of Batman Arkham. And usually the Arkham combat outside of the Batman games really aren't that great. It seems like the full game will have a skills menu that you can access, but as of right now, there's no telling how the game will let you upgrade your character. The moveset is somewhat bare bones at first, but given that this isn't a full game, that's to be expected. I like the promise of this game, but I'm a little more on the fence on the actual combat itself, and whether or not the full game will expand itself. The game's default settings don't actually run all that well to begin with though. You'll have to set everything to low and FSR on if you want to play the game at a playable frame rate. This game's supposed to release sometime this year, but no official date. Rage of the Dragons is a fighting game that was released on the Neo Geo many years ago. From what I can recall, this was supposed to be an official Double Dragon fighting game, but it never came to pass, so they decided to turn it into its own thing. It's the game the same way you remember on the Neo Geo. I'm not actually super familiar with this game or its mechanics, so it'll take some time for me to learn it. And yes, if you're wondering, this has rollback netcode as well. These older fighting games were really meant to be played with a fight stick. Yes, you can play this on your Steam Deck, and yes, you can play it with your D-pad, but arcades back then were very different from controllers you have today. If you have a fight stick, you should play it with that. It's highly recommended, and yes, most fight sticks work on Steam Deck out of the box. This game has no official release date as of the making of this video, but given that it's an older game that's already pretty much complete and they're re-releasing it with netcode, it shouldn't take too long for them to release this. Silicon Wasteland's developer actually reached out and wanted me to check out their demo, and as such I am. I tried not to cover too many visual novels on Next Fest because, well, visual novels are just kind of difficult to evaluate based on a demo alone. I do quite like the premise of this visual novel though. I like the art style and the aesthetic, and honestly, that's enough to sell a lot of people. You don't really see too many stories based on the quiet apocalypse. A lot of apocalyptic stories or post-apocalyptic stories are, well, let's just say they're epic stories. And this is set after that, and this is set during the twilight years of humanity, but it's awfully quiet. Anyways, the visual novel works great on Steam Deck. Honestly, I know this is going to be a stupid thing to say, but I do wish more visual novels had controller support. This one doesn't, and I kinda wish it did, so I know if the developer's watching it, well, you know what you should do. This comes out in 2025. Iron Saga Versus is a brand new fighting game based on various mecha anime. Well, it's based on a couple of mecha anime and also some original mechs as well. The gameplay looks incredibly gorgeous. The art style, the more chibified art style of the mechs, it looks great. That said, the demo only has one mech I actually recognize from an anime, Mazinger Z. There's also another mecha from an older anime called Dankuga. As for other crossover mechs, who knows? I'm sure we're gonna see like an Evangelion unit or one of the Gundams in this game. I'm sure it's gonna happen. And even just playing this casually feels really good. I suppose the one real issue I have though is that the game just crashes on the Steam Deck. Like, it works and I can play for a little bit, but it'll just crash randomly sometimes, which is incredibly unfortunate because I don't really get the opportunity to really experiment with the game's combat system, see how combos actually work. So yeah, the game was fun and even runs pretty well when it works, but when it crashes, it sucks. Like a lot. I hope they fix that when the game fully releases though. And the game is supposed to release sometime this year. Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Ultimate is a game I talked about earlier in the last Next Fest video, and for good reason. The game's a lot of fun. That said, this is an upgraded re-release of Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds, which is the original title. This one's got an upgrade to Unreal Engine 5, though Unreal Engine for a pixel art game does seem a little excessive, but it is what it is, I guess. It's been a while since I've played the original Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds, so I really can't tell you what the difference is between this and the original, aside from maybe the original's DLCs being part of the base game version of this game, and maybe some balance tweaking, but other than that though, the game is pretty similar to the original, at least gameplay wise. As stated in the prior video, you start at level 60 in the demo, but the actual game will start you from level 0, so you won't be nearly as powerful starting the game off. You also have access to more difficulty options and more levels as well. The game releases on February the 13th, 2025. Rivals of Aether 2 is the sequel to Rivals of Aether, and this time it comes with a brand new set of mechanics like the ability to guard and the ability to grab your opponent as well, stuff that wasn't in the first Rivals of Aether game. I will say, if you play this game online, you're probably going to get your ass handed to you unless you're decent at the game. I suppose the one issue I have is that the game doesn't have its unique 2D art style anymore. I've noticed this trend of indie games switching over to 3D. It's like they're going through their own version of the PS1 3D era. Every 2D game must try 3D, and I've seen it happen with Wizards of Legends too. And in terms of pure aesthetics, it kind of looks like every other Smash clone that tried to exist, like Icons or Rushdown Revolt or whatever. But at the end of the day, the game is a lot of fun. I will mention that a lot of people bought Rivals of Aether 1 specifically for workshop support, and while workshop support's not going to be at Rivals of Aether 2 at launch. The developers say any mod support would happen probably long after launch. I don't know how long is, but whatever, I guess. The game actually releases in a few days. By the time this video is done, it might already be out. Decolate Decoration has you take the role of a ghost who ends up being madly in love with someone. And before you pass on, your job is to kill him and take him with you into the great beyond. The demo itself is extremely short. It's a sort of point and click game where you select your choices and hopefully figure out how to kill your loved one. There's supposed to be 6 endings, but honestly the demo is so short that you don't really see any real consequences. Like legitimately, this is one of the shortest demos I've ever tried out. Given this is meant to be a story-driven game, it is quite difficult to gauge the game if it's any good or not. The demo doesn't really help, but the demo does set the stage for the rest of the game, so if you're into this sort of stuff, then maybe give it a go. As for whether or not this works well on Steam Deck, yes it does. But if you're itching to play this game, then know that there's no official release date. Not yet at least. And speaking of psychotic lovers, it's time to talk about AI2U. It's a sort of escape room type game where you have to investigate and figure out how to escape from the clutches of a girl that wants to be your psychotic lover. I actually talked about this game on my brand new podcast, Off the Console. This brand new podcast features games revealed, Gardner Bryan, and of course yours truly, High Tech Lowlife. We just aired our very first episode on October the 20th. So be sure to check that out. There will be a link in the description down below for the full channel. As of the recording of this video though, there's only one episode, but maybe there'll be a second one by the time this video comes up, who knows. But back to AI2U. The main reason why this game is called AI2U is the game's use of AI. Instead of using AI generated art or assets, instead it uses AI responses to you. One of the main mechanics of this game is conversing with this AI entity. In this case, this AI entity is you, this psycho girl that wants to be your girlfriend and will kill you if you refuse or snoop around too much. It may be fun to converse with this entity, but you have to remember, she will kill you if you piss her off. I will admit most of my dialogue with this AI entity is just profusely apologizing for snooping around our computer, mostly to try to save my own hide, but even AI entities have their own limits. And yes, this functionality does work on Steam Deck. You can either type out your responses or use the microphone. Yes, that's right. You can speak to her using your voice, which is kinda crazy. And yes, the Steam Deck has a built-in microphone. It was a fun little experiment, especially with experimenting with the AI entity. Now, I think a lot of people are going to try to download this and play the game just to try to jailbreak the AI to make it do things more akin to ChatGPT than a psychotic girlfriend. Things that ChatGPT really wouldn't give you by default, like chemical ingredients and stuff like that, but still. This game releases sometime in 2024. And on the topic of AI is this game called AI Limit. You know, there's no actual use of AI in this game. Instead, the AI refers to the fact that you're some sort of combat android known as a blader. You know what this game reminds me of? Code Vein. It reminds me of Code Vein. Remember that game? I thought Code Vein was okay. And I thought this game was okay too. You know, I'm not really that big into Souls-likes that aren't from Software, because they don't really hit the mark usually. Like, very few Souls-likes hit the mark outside of From Software's own games and something like Lies of P. It also has more of a Bloodborne feel, given that when you're locked onto an enemy, you can dash instead of roll. But I digress. Every weapon has a unique weapon art. Rather than using mana, you can instead use this gauge that refills as you land hits on an enemy. I don't remember what it's called. There is some meat here, but there's probably a lot more to be explored in the full game. As for whether or not this game works on Steam Deck, it does. It runs okay, I guess. I wish it ran a little better on the Steam Deck. I think it'd be a great Steam Deck game if it just ran a little better. Maybe if it were more optimized, but this is just a demo. The game is still in development after all. That said, the game is supposed to be released sometime this year. Captain Blood is a throwback to the old PS2 or Xbox 360 era of action-adventure games. Maybe throwback is a little disingenuous given that this was a game that was meant to be released during that era. It was cancelled 14 years ago and has now been uncancelled. Seeing a game get uncancelled is extremely rare, but the game is also suitably dated as well. The game doesn't let you actually control the camera in any capacity, with the right stick being explicitly for rolling. But aside from the gameplay being a little dated, the game is pretty fun. It's certainly more fun than Skull and Bones, that's for sure. As the game says, don't do it for England, do it for gold. I've been hankering for an old Xbox 360 style game, and I've got it now. The official Steam page doesn't have a release date, but as stated in the trailer, the release date is sometime in fall of 2024, which ends in like 2 months, so it's either gotta be next month or sometime in December. Taiko no Tatsujin is a series of rhythm games that requires you to play with a drum controller. Well, it doesn't require, it's just highly recommended. Playing Taiko no Tatsujin on a controller just feels kind of sad compared to playing it on the actual drum controller, or a controller from someone like Gamma 2. I know they make one. Anyways, this demo is kind of a small demo because it only features 2 songs on all difficulties. One of their brand new original songs and Beethoven's 5th Symphony. Yeah, that's right, that's what I'm playing right now. I don't have a Taiko controller, but I really should get one, and I want to see if that works on the Steam Deck because this game works great on Steam Deck. And yes, I know there are Taiko simulators on PC you can download and play. Yes, I know that. And they also probably work on Steam Deck as well. This game's actually releasing very soon on November the 6th, 2024. Disorder is a game that, quite frankly, I don't know what I was thinking when I downloaded this. Yes, I downloaded this knowing that this was basically Stellar Blade at home, but it doesn't even feel like that. It kind of just doesn't really feel right at all. I'm not sure what it is about this game. The combat just doesn't sit well with me. It feels like a bad approximation of a Souls-like game, like it really does. It teeters on the verge of being a Souls-like or being a spectacle fighter, something like Nier Automata, but Korean. Wait, that's Stellar Blade. So like Stellar Blade, but a roguelike and with worse feeling combat, which is a little crazy to me. Maybe I'm just being too harsh in this game, given that this game is supposed to be a roguelike with, you know, persistent upgrades. Maybe I'm just not far enough, but the main gameplay hook, just the basics, doesn't really draw me in. I'm only documenting this because I said I would talk about all the demos I've tried, and this happened to be one of them. As for the game's art style itself, yes, you get to play as a sexy anime babe or whatever, but the truth is that this game just looks like one of those Unreal Engine 5 quote-unquote prototypes. You know, the ones where people say they remake Super Mario 64 in Unreal Engine 5, and then people are like, Nintendo hire this man? This game looks like that, if someone hired him. Do I feel bad for trashing this game? I mean, kind of. But at the same time though, the truth hurts. If it didn't hurt, then there'd be no reason to lie. As for whether or not this game runs well on Steam Deck, on the default settings, it sets everything to ultra graphics. You don't want to run this game on ultra graphics, otherwise it lags to hell. That said, if you're still interested in this title, then this game releases sometime in Q4 of 2024. As for games that I didn't like that much, I decided to give VA Proxy a second chance. Maybe I was just being a little too harsh on it. Not to mention the demo got updated as well. Now, let me be the first to say I still feel like the onboarding experience isn't great, but I do appreciate that there's more depth to the combat when you switch weapons around. I do think some of my criticisms are still there. I do think there should be more actions during combat, but I also recognize that this probably isn't that type of game. The game is more mobility focused. I guess spending more time with the demo really made the game grow on me. And that said, the game does focus more on exploration, and the exploration is quite fast if you know how to move around, and that in and of itself is quite exhilarating. At times it almost feels like I'm playing like an open world Sonic game, which I guess is fair, doesn't really have super in-depth combat as well, but maybe the secret to me enjoying this game was just recalibrating my expectations, because honestly I kind of expected it to be more like God of War and less like, I don't know, I don't want to say Sonic, but Sonic? With parrying? As for whether or not this is playable on Steam Deck, yes, this is playable on Steam Deck with full controller support now. You don't have to navigate the menus using the keyboard anymore. The game runs pretty well on Steam Deck, all things considered. But as stated in the prior video, this game still has no official release date. The release date hasn't yet been announced yet. Rogue Labyrinth is a game that I talked about in the prior video, and honestly, my opinions remain the same. It's a pretty fun game that's focused on not just hitting your enemies with the bat, but also hitting their projectiles back towards them, and using their dead bodies as projectiles as well. The demo was really fun. The only issue I really have with the game is the name of the game. Rogue Labyrinth is about as nondescript as you can get with a game like this. I know it's probably too late to change the name of the game, but that's just how I feel. The game releases in January of next year. I've never played the original Citizen Sleeper. I remember seeing Citizen Sleeper 1 being nominated for Games for Impact during one of the Game Awards years. I don't actually know what that means, but I can see why this game is special. I've only tried out a couple of the missions, and let's just say it is tense. At the beginning of the game, you'll select a class, and this determines how you play through the rest of the encounters. If you're a hacker, you'll want to hack through things. If you're an engineer, you'll want to blow through things. All in all, it's an interesting game. I don't know too much about the lore of Citizen Sleeper, or even really the lore of this demo I just played, but it's been one heck of a time. Even when you're not actively killing things, or I guess playing a game so to speak, you're making decisions and choosing dice rolls. It gets nail-biting seeing your efforts fail, and seeing you catastrophically fail a mission. That could be terrifying. All in all, this is pretty interesting, and it made me think about my decisions I had to make, and it made me think about getting Citizen Sleeper 1. Because Citizen Sleeper 2 has no real release date outside of 2025, but that could be anywhere between early and the end of 2025. Yellow House is a Russian visual novel, and it's of the psychological horror variety. As stated before, visual novel demos are quite difficult to evaluate because, well, story is key in these games and you don't get the full picture. But this game is a little freaky. I tend to find that games that are popular in Russia tend to be quite next level. Like look at Fear and Hunger, that's popular in Russia. And Russia seems to be a growing powerhouse in the world of visual novels, especially with two of the most critically acclaimed visual novels, Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, Inside a Bag of Milk, and Milk Outside a Bag of Milk, Outside a Bag of Milk, are pretty popular. As for this game though, there's something about this game that feels incredibly unsettling, even just the demo version itself. And I even got a bad ending this early on. The visual novel seems quite promising, especially with its unique 1-bit art style, like quite literally. It's just white and black, and I guess some red because I'm bleeding. There's no telling when this game will be released because this has no official release date. But hey, at least this demo works well on Steam Deck. A lot of quote-unquote immersive sims tend to take place in cities, in places where there's a bunch of NPCs. But this game takes place entirely within multiple different dungeons. Dungeon crawling mixed with immersive sim elements, we have a potential winner here, because Never Looted Dungeon is exactly that. Your goal is to do exactly that, loot the dungeon. It's a lot simpler than it sounds. But the game is fully physics-based, and as such it lets you do things that you probably wouldn't do in a typical RPG, like stacking crates to get where you shouldn't be, luring enemies into traps, and solving puzzles through unconventional means. I will admit, some of the cooler parts happened when I wasn't recording, unfortunately, but you have to trust me on this. This game could be one of the best. And it runs quite well on Steam Deck, and it's even got full controller support as well. And yes, there's even a Dark Messiah style kick. This game releases sometime next year. Random access is sort of a rarity in games these days. It's a full-on roguelike shmup, like a full shoot 'em up. You visit shops to get random weaponry, you also go through levels in a random order, presumably except for the final level, but this is just a demo so we'll never see that. As a result though, no two runs will ever be the same. A lot of what makes Bullet Hell compelling for some players is that you can play the game over and over again and learn to master the game more effectively. In my experience in my runs though, I feel like I got pretty lucky though. I got a bunch of weapons that were really powerful and filled up the screen with bullets, allowing me to kill things and get a higher score in like a more efficient manner. I thought the game was pretty fun, though at this point though, you'll probably have to play this game on a much higher difficulty because I played on like the second highest difficulty. So if you're someone that's seasoned with shmups, then probably play on the highest difficulty. And I mean, come on man, it's a 2D shmup, of course it's gonna work well on Steam Deck. But the game won't be released for a while because it has no official release date, so there's no telling when this game will be released. You know, I have this unofficial Next Fest policy where I explicitly avoid games that are kind of like Vampire Survivors because I've played a ton of them already. But I was told I should try this one out. This one here is Temtem Swarm. For those not in the know, Temtem is kind of like Pokemon, but I guess more indie and I guess slightly better. At least that's what some say. It didn't really get the attention of something like Power World, but that's probably because they didn't have any guns. But that's besides the point. The point is that this game is pretty fun. It is fun, but I am still a little on the fence on whether or not I want to buy yet another Vampire Survivors-like game. Especially when I can just play, I don't know, Vampire Survivors or even Hollow Cure, or my personal favorite type of these games, Death Must Die. Anyways, Temtem Swarm enters early access sometime in November the 13th to be exact. Koneru Dimension Girl is an action roguelike that's very reminiscent of something like Dead Cells. In fact, the game sort of kind of basically is Dead Cells. I will say, out of the gate, one thing that really annoys me with this game is the VTuber overlay in the bottom left corner of the game. Like, come on, man, that takes up so much space. Like, seriously, dude. The game is okay, I guess. The game doesn't really feel like it has that much depth to it, but maybe I just haven't gotten far enough. Or maybe the depth comes after you complete a run. Whatever the case is, it still feels like a pale imitation of something like Dead Cells, and Dead Cells is extremely fun. All in all, the game does work on Steam Deck, and the game is fun. I'm not saying it's not fun, I'm just saying there are better games you can play, better demos too even. This demo also has no official release date. I think I've said that I've never played the original Streets of Rogue, and playing the demo for Streets of Rogue 2, I can see why the first game got really popular. It's sort of this top-down 2D immersive sim. If there's a will, there's a way. And there are multiple ways to get around different objectives. You need to get into a house to get something, you can try knocking the door to get someone to answer, or you can try picking the lock, or better yet, you can try bashing the door down. There's always a number of different ways to complete your objective. The only real issue I have is that this demo doesn't have controller support. The first game had controller support, and supposedly this game's gonna have it too. But I just wish the demo had controller support because, well, that'd be great. This is one of those games that begs deeper exploration because that's what I want to do. The demo was actually supposed to be released sometime this week, but the game's been delayed and now it's supposed to release sometime at the end of this year, whenever that is. On the surface, Overthrow 2 looks like any old city builder, and for the most part, it sort of is. But it's got one key advantage: on-foot gameplay that's actually really fun. You know what? Let me show you. This game has an exhilarating speed. Like when you run really fast, and you can jump pretty high too. You basically start out as a mid-game Terraria character, and you can run really fast and jump pretty high as well. Honestly, man, just running and drifting in this game and just dicking around is incredibly fun. And honestly, this makes this one of the more fun city building games I've played. I know a lot of those games get more fun the longer you play, but this is fun like almost immediately. And it's just the running mechanics. You can run on water too, and it feels like a Sonic game. Well, almost. You're also absurdly powerful, being able to pick up giant trees and stuff like that, and you can throw them pretty far too. This is what games need, more of this over-the-top gameplay. I suppose the only issue I have is that the demo doesn't really have any enemies that can actually challenge you. Imagine enemies that are as fast as you or as strong as you. That'd be awesome. Maybe you'll see more of those in the late game. As of right now, the game runs pretty decently on Steam Deck, but I feel like the more structures you build and the more NPCs you have in your town, the laggier it'll be on Steam Deck. Hopefully that won't be the case, but that is always a risk, so do keep that in mind. That said, we probably won't have to wait for very long because this game releases sometime this year. Sulfur is a roguelike FPS, and rather than being a boomer shooter despite its appearances, it's actually a more tactical experience overall. I talked about this in a prior video, and honestly my opinion hasn't changed very much on this. It's still a great game that you should definitely try out. It's the best kind of roguelike, a roguelike that's unforgiving and requires you to make use of all of your resources that you have available, and to find resources, well, around the area. It's a fight for survival. It's a fight to survive while also conserving as much ammo as possible, cause you'll never know when you need it. And honestly, that's what makes this so exhilarating. I wish there were more roguelike FPSs like this as opposed to, you know, more arcadey style FPSs. The damage is high and the threat of death is even higher, so you should be careful. And yes, this game runs great on Steam Deck, and the game comes out next week on Monday, which is great. You know what I wasn't expecting? A gacha game from the guys that made Danganronpa. Tribe 9 is that. It kind of tries to approximate the Zenless Zone Zero style of combat, but to be honest, while that game doesn't have too much depth with the actual moment-to-moment combat itself, everything else surrounding Zenless feels great, even if the game is kind of simplistic in nature. I will say the intro mission is insanely long, so long that I didn't even get to the best part of the game. the gacha, rolling the gacha. This is gonna be an extremely cold take, but the best part of playing any gacha game is rolling the gacha itself. At some point, I am gonna go back and finish the demo and actually try to roll the gacha if that's even in the demo, because at the end of the day, that's all I really want to do. I wanted to roll the gacha to see if I got anything, and to flop my free-to-play 5-star, or whatever it's called in this game, SSR, I guess, UR. I'm not sure what this game uses for its higher tier characters, but this game does work on Steam Deck, so if you need a gacha game to play out of the box on the Steam Deck from Steam directly, this might be your game. But if you want to play a game that's kind of like this but a little bit better, you can always play Zenless Zone Zero, and I've got a video guide for that. That said, the game has no official release date, not yet at least. On the topic of gacha games, let's talk about this game right here, Metria. Metria is a gacha game made by the same guys that made Torum Online, which is a game I've covered on the Steam Deck. It's a hack and slash game, and I mean, it's alright. For what it's worth though, it's pretty fun. The only issue I have is that there are so many loading screens in this game. It's unreal how many loading screens there actually are. I mean, it feels like it got sent back to the PS2 Stone Ages with how many loading screens there are. But the main draw here is the fact that it's a gacha game, so you know what I gotta do. Rush through the prologue and get to the part where we actually get to summon characters. So as you can see now, I'm summoning, and wow, look at that. I got a rainbow dot. You know what that means? It's probably a 5-star, or I guess an SSR in this case. I want to see what all of these items are though. Are these just like materials? Oh no, there's characters too. I got the protagonist. I got another dude that didn't have at the start. But none of these SR characters even matter really, because we're only really there for the SSRs. At a base level, the game is pretty fun, but a lot of the depth doesn't come from the actual combat itself, but rather equipment and stuff. And there's my SSR. He looks like a pretty sweet looking demon dude. I'm gonna put him on. The cool thing here is that you get a bunch of rolls to start with, which is pretty fun if you're into that. The game does work pretty well on Steam Deck, but as a word of caution, do recognize that when you launch the game, you have to install more data as well. The game releases on November the 7th, 2024. S4U is one of the more unique games out there. One thing that's really gotten to me is that you can't actually type out your responses, but I still think that you should be able to actually genuinely type things out. You can use the keyboard to type things out, but instead of typing out what you pressed, it just kind of like auto types out the responses that the developers want you to tell them. I guess it does make sense as this is sort of a visual novel sort of game almost. I'm not really sure what kind of game this is, to be honest. It's not really a visual novel either. I still think this is worth a go. And as of the making of this video though, there's still no official release date. Oyasuma reminds me of explicitly one PlayStation 1 era title. That's right, LSD for the PlayStation 1. It doesn't play quite like it given that there's an emphasis on platforming, but it gives off LSD vibes. Whereas LSD Dream Emulator can become unsettling really quickly due to its random generation, this game leans heavily into the psychological horror aspects. And this, combined with the unusually unsettling nature of the visuals in this game, I don't know what it is, but it gives me the creeps. And since that's the feeling it's going for, it does it really well. While the game is listed as having full controller support, the demo for whatever reason does not take controller inputs. Instead, you have to use keyboard inputs. But other than that though, the game works quite well on Steam Deck. This game is slated for release sometime next month. On the topic of horror games, let's talk about silly Poly Beast. It's a top-down survival horror game. It's very much stylized after the old Resident Evil style games. You have a skateboard that you can use to skateboard, but definitely not during the demo at least. You do have limited ammo, but you always have a way to fight enemies, and your revolver regenerates ammos after each kill. 1 bullet per kill. You do have access to your skateboard as a melee weapon though, so you're never fully out of ammo, and you can always fight. I guess this kind of goes against the survival horror ethos where you always have to pick and choose your fights, and sometimes fighting isn't the best way to go about things. Cause here you can always fight, and it's always a viable option. Despite everything though, the demo is still a pretty good time, and there's still a number of different puzzles you'll have to solve and figure out how to maneuver around. And of course, the game isn't very forgiving if you decide to run straight ahead. You have to figure things out, scope out your environments, and to proceed carefully. You know, everything you need in a good survival horror game. Another major survival horror element that seems to be missing in this game is having limited storage. A lot of classic survival horror games require you to do a lot of inventory juggling. Maybe that'll be more relevant in later parts of the game, but for now this is very much a combat-oriented demo, and the combat is pretty fun. The game works quite well in Steam Deck, but there's still no official release date for this game. Metal Bringer's a game I've talked about a number of different times at this point, and it's a game I talked about during the Steam Pals, and for good reason. This is a fully featured Next Fest demo that lets you play through a good chunk of the game and experience reasonably a good chunk of the experience as well. And this is probably the most fun Next Fest demo out there. You can feel yourself getting more powerful, learning the skills, hijacking more powerful mechs, and stealing mechs from enemies. The game just feels like a masterclass of dopamine, and all of this without being forced to buy into a gacha experience. I will say the demo does start off quite slow, and I assume the game does as well. But later on you can unlock an extreme mode, which puts you in a more mid-game state, featuring more weapons and more arms that are unlocked, giving you a better handle on what's possible, giving you a better handle on how much more powerful you can become. The game releases sometime in 2025. So I tried out this bullet hell shmup called Crystal Breaker, and let me be frank, the announcer is super loud and super annoying, and you hear her more often than not, even more than the actual game itself. And this happens more often than you think, especially if you're pretty good at chaining. Other than that though, it's an okay shmup. It isn't too difficult. I think I preferred the other shmup I tried out, but if you are interested, this game does work pretty well on Steam Deck. I mean, like, no duh, it's a 2D shmup. But the game also releases fairly soon, actually towards the end of November. Isekai Zema Ruins and Tales Journey should be the sort of game I like. 2D platform with some action RPG elements, but the game just feels weird in my hands. I'm not sure what it is I don't like about it, but it just feels kind of wrong and slippery, and I'm not sure why, which is kind of unfortunate too, because this game does look like a lot of fun otherwise. I think part of it has to do with how the characters are animated. It just feels wrong, you know? And maybe it's just the fact that I have a crappy little fire skill and it doesn't do a whole lot besides just do one hit. I will say that the developer doesn't speak English, and the developer has gotten a lot of feedback. And I do agree with the sentiment that this game's demo was kind of just half-baked, you know? But I don't mean it in a harsh way. I think the developer should go back to the drawing table and maybe fix some of the issues I have with just like the game feel. But aside from that, how does it perform on Steam Deck? Well, I mean, it performs pretty well. Well, I mean, what'd you expect, right? And if you want to look forward to the full game releases sometime in 2025, but no actual date otherwise. Star Vaders is a card-based roguelike, and it was recommended by the developer Balatro himself. The concept is fairly simple. You prevent the Star Vaders from entering your territory, and if you build up too much Doom, it's game over for you. You can take damage, and taking damage does hinder you, but it's not a game-ending situation, not like filling up your Doom meter. Unlike a lot of card games, cards can also govern not just your attacks, but also your movement as well. So you want to balance your movement options and your attack options, because if you have too many attack options and not enough movement options in your deck, then you'll find yourself being a sitting duck that can't hit a lot of enemies. I did find myself on the end of stacking too many attack cards and not enough movement cards, meaning some enemies dodged out of the way and I couldn't hit them, which is unfortunate. And of course this costed me a run because I couldn't move around to actually hit the boss. It's this level of intricacy that you don't really see in a lot of card games. There's also multiple different characters with their own unique mechs that they can pilot, and as such, that governs their playstyle from the very beginning. The game works quite well on Steam Deck, surprise surprise, but the game also is supposed to be released sometime in Q2 of 2025, and it certainly doesn't feel like any other gacha game I've played. But on the other hand though, you are literally given a wheel and you have to roll to get a character. And it's like a roulette wheel. It's not even a fun gacha, so to speak. And to add them to your party, you have to play through their entire story mission, which isn't really something gacha games do. But I mean, I think it is a gacha game, but to be honest, come on man, it doesn't even feel that exciting as a gacha game. The gameplay is okay, I guess. The gameplay changes depending on what weapon type you're using. Like this character has a gun and uses gun skills. Later on in the demo, when you unlock characters, you have the ability to add them to your party, meaning you can play with multiple characters in your party during the main game mode itself. All in all, the gameplay is okay, but I feel like it gets kind of old fast, like really fast. The game works pretty well on Steam Deck. The developers recommend you set it to Proton Experimental to run this game. The game releases on October the 22nd, which is a few days. By the time this video releases, the game might already be out actually. Anton Blast is a game I've already covered in a prior Next Fest video, but it's time to talk about it again because I've played more of it and I think I've gotten even better at the game. It did require playing the level a couple of different times to really get the nitty-gritty of the level, but dang is it so much fun. It also helps that the first level of the game is also really well designed, or at least I think this is the first level of the game. Bulldozing through the entire game does not get old. I will admit though, I didn't use any new footage because I didn't record any footage, but that's besides the point. The point is that I think I've gotten better with the game. The game's even gotten better as I've gotten better. This game releases on December the 3rd, 2024. Luna Venia is an action roguelike. Unlike most of the other action roguelikes out there, this isn't like a Dead Cells clone. It arguably has more in common with a run and gun than it does with something like Dead Cells. The game is pretty fun though, I will say. I suppose the only real issue I have is that the game does feel kind of floaty at times. Like it feels like the fall speed is just a little too slow, and that's just the fall speed by default. But that's more of a personal preference than it is an actual issue with the game. I will say when you start the demo up for the very first time, it starts off in Chinese and you have to basically figure out how to switch to English. That said, the game does have an English option, but the English translations aren't that great. You also have to try out just about every option to change the language options. At the very least, the game should start you off by selecting your language of choice. If you want to play it in Chinese, you can, but if you want to play in English, you can as well. The game works pretty well on Steam Deck. The full game releases sometime in Q1 of 2025. And on the topic of Dead Cells, let's talk about a game being developed by the creators of Dead Cells, Windblown. Rather than being a 2D sort of Metroidvania approximation like Dead Cells is, this is more of a top-down hack-and-slash action roguelike. More akin to something like Hades, but with a more distinct Dead Cells-like combat system, featuring 2 weapon slots, 2 sub-weapon slots, and some skills. That said, I wish the gameplay made use of the idea that you're on a floating island, because, I mean, aside from having a dash across gaps, there's no real peril. There's no way you can fall into an edge or make enemies fall into an edge either. Like, imagine if it were a little more dangerous where you had to jump over the gaps, and if you miss a jump, you die, or I guess lose a bunch of health. When it comes to action roguelikes, Motion Twin really knows what they're doing, and the pedigree shows here as well. But as with most roguelikes, the highs are very high towards the beginning, and issues don't start to show themselves until multiple runs later. I will say that you are expected to fail your first run, and unless you know how to play the game, or maybe you're starting over from the very beginning, again with all of your game knowledge, you're gonna fail your first run. I mean, you don't even get anything to heal yourself with until you die. Windblown actually releases very soon, in just a few days. And on the topic of top-down action roguelikes that are also co-op, let's talk about the Ninja Turtles. You know, it's one of the unofficial rules of making a Ninja Turtles game. You have to make it co-op. This right here is a top-down action roguelike. Again, kind of like Hades almost. I had a lot of fun playing as my favorite Ninja Turtle, Raphael. I would imagine the game is more fun co-op, but I could also imagine it being more difficult due to the sheer chaos. That said, the actual roguelike structure of the game is quite similar to other roguelikes. You clear out rooms and then you get an upgrade. And ideally, you would choose whatever upgrade synergizes with whatever element you're running. In this case, I've been running Ooze the entire time. It's this sort of poison build, and I even got a sweet upgrade where after the poison ends, it spreads to another enemy that wasn't afflicted. So I can definitely see how powerful you might be able to get if you get a good run with, perfectly synergistic upgrades. As a single player game, this game works very well on Steam Deck, no performance issues to speak of, and this game releases next month on November the 6th. But if you're looking for more pure bare knuckle beatdown, We Could Be Heroes is your game. It's a beat 'em up with one major differentiator. The objects have physics and so do the enemies when you kick them around. As of right now, the combat is a little bare bones, but honestly the physics hilarity makes it so much more fun. I miss when games would experiment with adding physics to them. Like having physics-based objects just makes a game 10 times better, even if it's like mostly for show, kind of like Dark Souls. And you know what? We Could Be Heroes runs great on Steam Deck, and it's even 4-player co-op if so desired. And the game releases later this month, like within a week or so. Gus Zer is another game I talked about in a prior Next Fest video. It's a grid-based action roguelike, which is something I really haven't seen all that much. You know, most grid-based systems are turn-based. Like, traditional roguelikes are grid-based, but they're not in real time. This, however, is. I know it's a little disorienting to like have to get used to a grid system in a real-time game, but once you really get into it, it's actually a lot of fun. As of the making of this video, there's still no official release date for this game. Divine Dynamo Flame Frit is kind of like Zelda. It's being developed by Creditts, and all I can really say is that the game is a lot of fun. Admittedly, the demo doesn't have too much to chew, but what's there is pretty fun. I wish there was a little bit more to the demo than just the first dungeon and also like the boss. Maybe like an upgrade or something, because it looks like there's 4 weapon slots, but we only ever get to use one of them for the entire demo. And that's the flame sword that we have. The game does have potential, but that really depends on how the rest of the game is. It is worth mentioning that if you pre-order Card on CL, you actually get this game as a free bonus as well. Card on CL also has a demo for the Steam Next Fest, but I'm not covering it because I already have the full game. I'm currently reviewing it. But if you decide not to do that, then you'll have to wait sometime this year to play this game. I've covered Curent Sword in my previous Next Fest video, and it's an interesting one to say the least. There's been a flurry of isometric Souls-likes, but I feel like most of those really miss the point of the Souls games. This one seems more in line with the Souls-likes that I'm familiar with. There really isn't much for me to say here that I haven't said before. It's a competent, top-down Souls-like. The only issue though is that it seems like lock-on is kind of meaningless. I should mention this game is a little less punishing than other Souls-likes. For starters, there's no stamina meter, meaning you can sprint indefinitely and you can attack indefinitely as well. And also you don't lose all of your EXP or souls or whatever it's called in this game when you die, you only lose a portion of it. I do have some additional annoyances with this game, like for example, locking on seems to be kind of pointless, because when you lock on and block, it should just automatically redirect your shield towards that enemy, but it doesn't really do that. It kind of just blocks in whatever direction you're holding, and that kind of defeats the purpose of locking on, doesn't it? Anyways, this game has no official release date still. Balattra's success has had dire consequences on the release of casino-like games. In this case, we're going to talk about All in Abyss. This is a 1v1 Texas Hold'em like versus game. Having basic Texas Hold'em knowledge really does help, but what helps even more is using items and also special skills. These special abilities let you cheat your way into getting high value hands, which you'll need because, surprise surprise, sometimes enemies will rig the game in their favor otherwise. That said, there's nothing more satisfying than going all in and winning, even if I did rig the cards. Of course, the main goal of these matches is to take all of your enemies' chips. Think of it as their life total. You want to make them go completely broke. But of course, it's not gambling unless you put your own life on the line too, right? I will say it never gets old demolishing your enemy in one go. The game works great on Steam Deck, but there's no official release date. Elite Exorcist Miko stars one of the biggest Japanese VTubers of all time, Sakura Miko, and she faces off against other Hololive members, such as the recently graduated Amelia Watson. I mean, the game's alright I guess. Hololive is super lucky to have a bunch of passionate fans that love all of their talents enough to make pretty high quality games for the most part. Like HoloCure is pretty high quality. What I do find most interesting is that Hololive lets people publish Hololive fan games on Steam. It's kind of like the Toho situation. Most of the Toho games on Steam aren't even made by the guy that created Toho to begin with, and Hololive has maybe one official game under their banner. Elite Exorcist Miko releases sometime in December of 2024. Momobosu is kind of like Celeste, but Japanese, and with some combat. It's a precision platformer, much like Celeste. The actual platforming is difficult, but it's never difficult to get into because you just start from the very room you died in. This game's also got boss battles in it, or rather the demo only has one boss in it. And realistically, once you learn how to parry and learn the boss attack timings, it really becomes a cakewalk. You also don't die in one hit, and you also regenerate health after not being hit for a little bit, meaning in the long term it's okay to make multiple mistakes so long as you don't make multiple mistakes in a row. It's good for accessibility purposes, but for a precision platformer, I do wish the game were a little harder. All in all though, it's a solid, like, Celeste style platformer, you know, a precision platformer I should say. Currently this game has no real release date. And on the topic of unusual games, let's talk about Mushroom Musume. It's a game where Well, at least I assume it's a game where you're essentially raising a mushroom girl. I'm not gonna lie to you, I played the demo, I don't fully understand the game. Like, I understand there's stats and it's more of a simulation style game. I feel like I'm missing something here. It's an interesting concept to be sure, so this is definitely user error. Or perhaps maybe the game just doesn't click for me. Really, it's one of those games I really have to get into to see how it works, because I will admit it is a little confusing, but I really want to give this game an earnest fair shake. Because at the very least, it's intriguing and it's fairly unique. The game does have controller support, but I feel like, just telling us what the buttons do during the gameplay segments would help out a lot. Like, I got this mushroom girl and I don't even know how I got her. Like, she's supposed to be your mushroom daughter, but like, I don't know how the heck this happened. But I guess I'll find out pretty soon because this game is slated for release sometime in Q4 of this year. Hey, wait a second, we are in Q4 of this year. And I have one of the more weirder demos here, Urban Myth Dissolution Center. After a mishap causes you to rack up a pretty substantial debt to the Urban Dissolution Center, you work as their newest private investigator. But rather than investigating actual crimes, instead you're investigating urban myths, more supernatural and unusual cases. You search for evidence, you investigate them, you put the pieces together, you investigate social media, and then from there, I don't really know what happens next because the demo kind of just ends abruptly before we can solve a case. But the game sure knows how to grab your intrigue, probably due to the strength of the writing. As a story-focused game, again, it is difficult to ascertain whether or not this game will actually be good, but the story that's been presented to us is pretty compelling. And the crazy 2D animations are insanely over the top, and let's be perfectly frank, we need more of that over-the-top energy in our lives. Urban Myth Dissolution Center releases sometime in February of next year. Stroo was kind of a pain in the butt to get working on the Steam Deck. It does work on Steam Deck, and you can play the game, so long as you're okay with keyboard controls. It is worth mentioning that you do have to register for the game, so you need to make an account to even play the game to begin with. The game itself looks kind of fine. I mean, it kind of looks like it plays like Valorant, but like, I don't know, more anime? I figured it's worth covering this since this is one of the most played Next Fest demos. I didn't think people really wanted more Valorant like FPSs, but here we are. What is interesting though is that you do have the ability to go all Paper Mario and like stick to walls, or I guess it's more like a link between worlds. It's that one mechanic you've seen in some of the trailers where your character can go flat into a 2D shape, like, like a piece of paper, or like a 2D character, believe it or not, and kind of crazy, That said, at a certain point in the tutorial, the game just stopped being controlled by my Steam Deck, and I really couldn't tell you why. Will this game work on Steam Deck at launch? It might. I mean, the demo works, at least I think it does. But there's no telling if the full release will work on Steam Deck or if they'll block it due to anti-cheat concerns. But as it stands, there's no current release date for this game. And if you're looking for more co-op roguelikes, then this is your game. This game can be played with up to 4 players. Admittedly, I tried out the demo by myself, and the single player demo is fine. The single player is fine, but I think the game it looks a lot more fun when you play with multiple players, and you will want multiple players. The main problem is that while this game has local co-op, this game doesn't have online co-op. So during the beginning of this game's early access period, there will only be local co-op. The developers have heard your feedback. Yes, they will be working on online co-op, but there's no telling when the game will add that to its early access period. That said, if you do want to play this demo with other people online, then you'll want to use Steam Remote Play Together. So I will admit, I did go into this game thinking this would be more like a beat 'em up, but it's actually more like a hack and slash, so not quite the same thing. So yes, even just playing this game by myself, I can tell this game will be a lot better with 4 players playing co-op, or even just 2 players playing co-op. So aside from that, the game works pretty well on Steam Deck, and the game goes into early access sometime in Q2 of 2025. I didn't find too many games that straight up didn't work on Steam Deck, but I did find one, Supervive. It says here that, well, essentially, Wine, Proton, and Steam Deck are not supported by this application. It seems that the developers really don't want any Linux gamers. So yeah, it must be an anti-cheat thing. Another game that doesn't work on Steam Deck due to anti-cheat concerns, due to the fact that apparently all Linux users are dirty cheaters. Joy. Wow. I've never covered this many Next Fest demos in a single video. And yes, 10 of them are demos that I've played for a prior video, but they still apply to this video because they're demos I've tried out for this entire Next Fest period. If I had to pick a single winner out of all of these demos, it would probably have to be Metalbringer because, I mean, let's be honest, it's probably the most fun demo I've played in a while. It's not to say that none of the games were nearly as fun, but I think that, well, simply put, I just had the most fun with it. It was the most polished demo, and it gave you just enough of the game to really explore what the game is all about. Yes, this is all 52 demos that I've tried out, and I'm gonna be frank with you, there were plenty of demos that I skipped for various reasons. Some of which were demos that I didn't even know were available. Stuff like all of the Steam Pals videos that were featured in that video. Like, I haven't played a single one of the other guys' demos. And I kinda wish I did, but you know, editing these videos takes up a lot of my time. Probably a little too much, to be honest. Did I miss any demos that I should have tried out? If I did, just let me know. I'm gonna level with you, there were also a ton of Steam Next Fest demos that just looked plain bad. Like, you'd be surprised at how many of these games kind of look like asset flips, which is unfortunate too. And with the Steam Next Fest becoming more and more popular, there are more and more developers participating. Some of them have really great ideas, some of them have truly unique ideas, and some of them just have really polished demos that are just begging to be played. And some games that got big during Next Fest really carried over that momentum to their releases. Balatro is one such a game. Balatro was discovered during this February's Steam Next Fest, and it became really popular. It became one of the most played demos, and as such, a lot of people bought the game, and now it's super popular. So here's one thing Valve tells developers about the Next Fest. You can only ever participate in one Next Fest per game. So it would be unwise to blow your Next Fest on a demo that's really subpar, and I did play some pretty subpar demos, to be honest. And there's also one more thing too. My unofficial policy of never covering games like Vampire Survivors. Let me be perfectly frank. I still like Vampire Survivors, it's a great game. And yes, I do still like some of the other games in that genre, like Hollow Cure or Death Must Die. But then I see all of these developers kind of making games that are kind of like Vampire Survivors. Yes, I know I covered one, Temtem Swarm, and that game was pretty fun. But there's a bunch of others that just don't look great. And you would be surprised at how many of these sorts of games there are, and how many genres they end up taking over. Like, I've seen these sorts of games in beat-em-ups, shoot-em-ups, bullet hell games. I could see it being in a shmup and also bullet hell genre, but like, come on man, when I look for a shmup, I want to find like a legitimate shmup, not a Vampire Survivors-like game. And why are they in beat-em-ups? They are not beat-em-ups. I've also seen some games tout controller support for the full game, but the demos don't have controller support. That's not really ideal, you know? Like, I'm doing the entirety of the Next Fest on my Steam Deck. I'm playing all of these demos on my Steam Deck. Like, I get it if it's a game that wasn't meant to be played on a controller, period, but there are plenty of these games that A, are playable on controller, and B, tout full controller support, yet the demos don't support it. So if any developers are watching this, I just want to let you know, demos are our first impressions of your game. These are vertical slices you can control, and as such, they should be good enough to compel players to buy the full game. You know, thinking back, there was this one statistic from the Xbox 360 era talking about how demos somehow reduce the sales of games.
So here's some data from EDAR about Xbox 360 sales. So here's these 4 lines of 4 different types of games. What are these lines? Well, let's look at the bottom one. The bottom one is games with no demo or trailer. They have the lowest cumulative sales. After that, games with a demo have more sales. Makes sense. Games with a demo have more sales than games with no demo. Totally makes sense. Well, what's the next line? This is things with a demo and a trailer. Sure, makes sense. I get it. A demo and a trailer is going to move more units. What the hell is that top line? That's games with just a trailer. Wait, you mean we spent all this money making a demo and getting it out there and it cut our sales in half?
He mentions the possibility that yes, some players will play a demo and they think they've had their fill of the game and then just never buy the full game. Which is perfectly fair, that does happen sometimes. But he also fails to consider the fact that bad demos can drive players away. Yes, That's true. I usually talk about demos that I really enjoyed with the Steam Next Fest, and this is the first video I've made where I've talked about demos that really turned me off a game entirely. And I think people should talk more about that because, I mean, let's be perfectly frank. If I don't like a demo for a game, why would I buy the full game, right? Anyways, enough of the negativity. I want to talk about how much fun the Next Fests are because they're my favorite Steam event, and I've said it before, my favorite Steam feature as well. Well, I guess I shouldn't say feature, but still. Even with me talking pretty negatively about demos, I've had more fun with all of these demos, and there's definitely a couple of games I want to pick up when they fully release. All in all though, aside from that one game, the Next Fest has been a triumphant success. I found a lot of games I really think are unique, and a lot of games I just think are just plain fun. But this time I went through the painstaking detail of talking about games that I didn't like, or I really didn't like. Obviously I wouldn't intentionally pick these games if I didn't think they were promising at first, but whatever I guess. If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos, and if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.